Where did I start for my research? I start with the question or the observation that we as scholars of work and organization, we often study the outcomes of new technologies. Certainly right now with, for example, Industry 4.0, with AI, and we observe a lot of variety in those outcomes. And we often have to conclude that, yeah, well, the outcomes are positive or negative, and we refuse often technological determinists or technological determinism. And we conclude that we have to study the technological innovation process to be able to explain the differing outcomes. But as I remarked, actually, few studies study the technological innovation process. Like, for example, your study also did. So the aim of our study was to explain the variety in technological innovation outcomes by studying the technological innovation process at workplace level. What did we need? A conceptualization of technological innovation processes. I used labor process theory. A labor process theory says that technological innovation is mostly a political process at multiple levels, where during that process, strategic choices are being made, choices that shape the outcomes of technological innovation. Those strategic choices are being made by actors involved in the process, and those actors have specific interests. And between those actors, there is a division of labor. Who is involved in what phase of the technological innovation, and who can decide on what strategic choices are being made. And I say at multiple levels, that's also important. And I just make a distinction between first order strategic choices that are being made on the level of the political economy, deciding which technology is being developed and adopted, promoted, and that already shapes or determines specific material characteristics and consequences of the technology. When a technology is introduced in a company, it already has a specific specific material characteristics and consequences, and possibly some consequences. Those are decided at the level of the political economy. But secondly, at workplace level, there can also be, there are also strategic choices. For example, when you configure the new technology within an existing production process. And we will be mostly studying those second order strategic choices. Okay, how did we do this? We conducted a comparative case study. We found 3 similar companies, small, medium enterprises, and they implemented the same technology. Which technology? They implemented manufacturing execution systems. What are those? Well, you have, most companies have a enterprise resources planning system at the top, digital. Then you have the shop floor where people work, where the machines operate. And in between, most companies still have a paper layer where a lot of data has been written down on paper and afterwards has to be digitized and entered into the ERP. The manufacturing execution systems, or MES, I will call them like that in this presentation, digitizes that process. So everything operators do, everything the machines do is automatically and digitally processed and entered into the ERP. So, again, to repeat the research question, can we the supposed variety in outcomes of mass deployments by analyzing the strategic choices being made throughout the process and the division of labor between management, workers, and consultants during the technological innovation process? These are data. I will not. So I interviewed all the involved actors, the technology developer, management, IT responsible, team leaders, operators, and I conducted field observations and used secondary data in the 3 cases. Findings, I will start with the outcomes of MES implementation. I found in every cases, in the 3 cases, similar outcomes. There was a centralization of operational data. Of course, everything was digital now. Everything went immediately into the ERP. So management had a central overview of what was a central and real-time overview of what was going on at the work floor. Also, there were increased opportunities for employee control. Of course, management could view what every employee was doing in real time. And finally, there was also a standardization of work practice. Also quite obvious because they were now digitally measured what employees were doing, so the work practices also had to be more standardized. 3 similar outcomes, but we also found some differences. There was centralization in each case, but also decentralized decision support for operators in 2 of the 3 cases. There were opportunities for employee control, but those were not used or not intended in 2 of the 3 cases. And again, standardization in every case observed, but the extent of this standardization differed greatly. How to explain these outcomes? Or give a bit of a theoretical explanation. The similarity comes from the first order strategic choices, determining the basic material characteristics of MES and their intended outcomes. They push towards centralization, control, and standardization. But these are, these first order strategic choices do not determine the outcomes. Now we have also the second order strategic choices when MES is deployed and designed at workplace level, and those choices caused the differences in outcomes. Those are the outcomes, but how can we explain those similarities and differences when we look at the process of technological innovation? First, which strategic choices did we observe? Here you get an overview of the different phases of the technological innovation process: the initiation, selection, design and implementation, and the use phase. And in each phase, which we could observe in every case, there were some strategic choices made. For example, in a selection, it was quite important whether the company decided to buy a MES off the shelf or a customized MES. Or in the design and implementation, the role of employee participation was quite important. And in some cases, it was quite restricted, limited. In some cases, it was extensive, which led to different strategic choices and eventually to different outcomes. Next, how can we explain which strategic choices were being made in those cases? There we looked at the division of labor between the actors involved. And I tried to make it clear by using a figure. And I will present the divisions of labor in 2 cases, and you will see why. This is the first case. And you see the different actors involved. So general management, operation manager, the operators, and the technology developer. And then the different phases. And the picture or the figure makes clear who works together in each phase. So for example, the initiation in case 1, so the problem statement was made by the operators together as the operational manager. They started from the same problem. Selection was made, the selection of the technology was made by general management together with operational manager. But then, very important, the design and implementation was done by involving technology developers, operators, and operational manager in a project team, where they developed and designed step by step the MES application and its functionalities for this case. the outcomes in this case. Centralization was high, but also decentralization. The extent of standardization was low, and they did not use maths for employee control. So look at this division of labor and compare it with this one in case 2. Here, the initiation and problem statement was set by the general management. They encountered some problems and they wanted to have a solution. The design was made only together with the operational manager together with the technology developer. No team leaders involved, no employees involved. And the implementation happened in 2 steps. First, together with the team leaders were informed, and secondly, the team leaders had to inform the operators. In this case, centralization was high. Decentralization, by which I mean, do the employees receive information on which basis they can make decisions on their own, like the example of the AI application in your cases, and the AI provides the managers in your case with information that helps them to make decisions. In the first case, decentralization was high. In the second case, decentralization was low. Also, the extent of standardization was high, and the use of employee control. They actually used the mass to control the performance of their employees a lot. So, this similar companies, same technology, totally different outcomes. And what was curious to see in each case was that the technical division of labor, so the way the production process was organized, was actually strengthened by the introduction and deployment of mass. So, for example, the division of labor in case 1 was already quite integrated, with employees already having a lot of autonomy, decision autonomy. And the introduction of mass led to even more decision autonomy. Standardization kept low, and employee control also kept low. While in the case 2, the technical division of labor was already quite fragmented. And the introduction of mass and its division of labor during the technological innovation process strengthened this existing technical division of labor. So there was a certain path dependency in the outcomes. Conclusions. First, understanding outcomes of technological innovation requires an analysis of social relations. At the level of the political economy, to understand the first order strategic choices that already determine parts of the material characteristics of the technology. We didn't do that actually in this paper, but I think it's still important because they point toward the similar outcomes across cases when the same technology is introduced. But also at workplace level, existing social relations and work organization translates into the division of labor during the technological innovation process. And this in turn translates into the variation in outcomes between those cases. Here we can again rephrase an old quote of Noble. So we often study the technology or the social relations that are being impacted by technological innovation, so looking at the outcomes. But in fact, those outcomes often reflect the existing social relations at the workplace. What did we learn in this case from about the nature of technological innovation processes at workplace level? First and foremost, there is no technological or social determinism, which is often a characteristic of, for example, the Industry 4.0 literature. But also, and I think this is more of a contribution of this paper, it's not, technological innovation processes are not apolitical. No, they are fundamentally political. The actors and their interests, and who has a say in the process can decide on the outcome of the technology. So this means that technological innovation has always or needs always to be studied at workplace level. There will also always be variation in the outcome in its outcomes. And finally, the organizational choice is not absolute, but structurally constrained by first-order strategic choices. Like we saw, there was a lot of similarity as well, besides the variation in the outcomes. But organizations could still choose the extent and use of certain functionalities. And finally, an implication which is quite useful for the theme of this conference as well. The outcomes of technological innovation can be shaped by addressing the technical division of labor at workplace level. So better work can lead to better technology. And I will explain it once more. So the technical division of labor translates into a division of labor during the technological innovation process, which in turn strengthens or reinforces the existing technical division of labor. So maybe instead of focusing on trying to shape technological outcomes, we can try to focus on better work, because that will in turn shape the outcomes of technological innovation. Thank you for your attention.
Time for one quick question.
Yes. Hi, thank you for this interesting piece of research and using the labor process as a starting point. In the labor process, we also talk about workers' agency.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that we can talk maybe a little bit more about what is specific in case number one, or what are the resources, the power resources that workers were able to use to make that influence. And you talked about autonomy, but maybe there's something else I don't know.
Okay.
Could you repeat the question just for the sake of the Zoom audience?
Yeah, of course. So the question was whether I could elaborate a bit more on employee autonomy in the technological innovation process, especially in case one. So case one was it was process industry. So the employees actually had quite a lot to say in the production process already. So they had to make sure the production was fully continuous. But yeah, they actually were lacking of a good. So all the data, of the machines was written down on paper, and afterwards put into the ERP. But they actually lacked a way to a search function, because they had these huge logbooks, but they couldn't search in those logbooks. For example, when there were problems or disturbances occurring, they couldn't search in the books to find out whether those disturbances already happened in the past. But because the MES provided them in not only a good search function, but also in ways to analyze data in real time, so to prevent possible disturbances. So it actually gave them a lot of new autonomy and decision. It gave them a way to perform their job in a better way. So yeah, maybe we can discuss afterwards a bit if I'm able to think a bit more about